The cathedral bells of St. Michael's rang through the crisp morning air as 300 guests filled the ornate pews. Sophia Blake stood before the massive oak doors, her hands trembling as she adjusted the ivory silk gown she had designed. Herself, every stitch, every pearl, every delicate lace detail, had been crafted with love over months of preparation. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, the culmination of 3 years with Trevor Martinez. The charming architect who had swept her off her feet during college. The massive doors opened, and Sophia began her walk down the rose-petal, scattered aisle. Her father's arm steadied her as cameras flashed from the society photographers Trevor had insisted on hiring. The guests turned to admire her creation, whispers of approval floating through the sacred space. But as Sophia's eyes found the altar, her heart began to race for all the wrong reasons. Trevor stood rigid, his face pale and drawn. Beside him, Rachel Stone, her maid of honor and closest friend since childhood, wouldn't meet her eyes. Something was terribly wrong. The fairy tale atmosphere that had taken months to orchestrate suddenly felt suffocating, like a beautiful trap. Closing around her, the moment everything collapsed as Sophia reached the altar, Trevor's hands shook when he took hers. The priest began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the cathedral, but Sophia could barely focus on the words. Trevor's palms were sweaty, and he kept glancing toward Rachel with an expression she had never seen before. If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace, the priest announced, as tradition demanded. The silence that followed felt eternal. Then Trevor dropped her hands as if they had burned him. "I can't do this," he whispered. But in the acoustics of the cathedral, everyone heard. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. I can't marry you." The collective gasp from 300 guests created a sound like rushing wind. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face as Trevor continued, his voice growing stronger with each devastating word. "In love with someone else? I have been for months. I tried to fight it, tried to convince myself that what we had was enough, but I can't live a lie." Sophia's vision blurred as she realized who he was looking at. Rachel stepped forward, tears streaming down her face, her bouquet of white roses falling forgotten to the marble floor. "Sophia, we never meant for this to happen," Rachel sobbed. "We tried to stay away from each other, but the feelings were too strong." The cathedral erupted in shocked murmurs and the rapid clicking of cameras. Sophia stood frozen in her handmade gown, watching her entire world crumble in front of hundreds of witnesses. The humiliation was so complete, so public. She felt as if she might disappear entirely. The mysterious savior as Sophia's knees buckled and she sank onto the altar steps. The cathedral doors burst open with dramatic force. A figure strode down the aisle with such commanding presence that even the most aggressive photographers lowered their cameras. The man was tall and imposing, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that spoke of wealth beyond measure. His dark hair was swept back, and his piercing blue eyes surveyed the scene with cool calculation. James Wellington III, tech mogul, and one of the youngest billionaires in the country, had somehow appeared in her moment of greatest need. Sophia had seen his face on magazine covers and business news, but she had never imagined their paths would cross, especially not like this. Without hesitation, James removed his jacket and draped it around Sophia's trembling shoulders. The expensive fabric was warm and carried the scent of cedar and bergamot. He lifted her to her feet with surprising gentleness for someone who commanded boardrooms and corporate empires. "The show is over," James announced to the gawking crowd, his voice carrying an authority that made even the boldest journalist step back. "Anyone who publishes photos of this lady in her moment of vulnerability will face legal consequences that will bankrupt them." The threat was delivered with such calm certainty the cameras immediately disappeared into bags and pockets. James guided Sophia toward the side exit of the cathedral, his arm around her waist providing strength when her own legs threatened to give out. The escape outside the cathedral, a sleek black Bentley, waited with the engine running. James helped Sophia into the passenger seat, his movements careful and protective. As they pulled away from the chaos, Sophia finally found her voice. "Why?" she whispered, her throat raw with unshed tears. "Why did you help me? You don't even know me." James glanced at her through the rearview mirror, and for a moment, his controlled expression softened. Because no one deserves to face that kind of cruelty alone. And because something about your situation reminded me of someone very important to me. They drove in silence through the city streets while Sophia tried to process what had just happened. Her wedding day had become a nightmare, but somehow this stranger had appeared like something from a fairy tale to rescue her from complete destruction. "Where are we going?" she asked as they left the city behind. "Somewhere safe," James replied. "Somewhere you can figure out what comes next without the whole world watching." The mansion of secrets, the Wellington estate, stretched across rolling hills an hour outside the city. As they approached the massive stone mansion, Sophia felt like she was entering another world entirely. The house was a masterpiece of architecture, with towering windows, ivy-covered walls, and gardens that looked like something from a Renaissance painting. Helena Cross, James's assistant and the closest thing he had to family, greeted them at the entrance. She was an elegant woman in her 50s, with silver hair and kind eyes that immediately put Sophia at ease. "I've prepared the blue suite," Helena said softly, leading Sophia through hallways lined with priceless artwork. "There are fresh clothes in your size, and dinner will be served whenever you're ready." As Sophia followed Helena up the grand staircase, she caught glimpses of James watching her with an expression she couldn't interpret. There was concern there, but also something deeper, something that suggested this rescue was more personal than a simple act of kindness. The blue suite was more luxurious than anywhere Sophia had ever stayed. The sitting room overlooked the gardens, and the bedroom was furnished with antiques that belonged in a museum. But what captured her attention was the wall of books. A personal library that spoke of intelligence and depth, the beginning of understanding that evening. Over dinner in the mansion's formal dining room, James began to reveal why he had intervened. They sat at opposite ends of a table that could seat 20, but somehow the conversation felt intimate despite the grand setting. "My sister Elizabeth died 3 years ago," James said quietly, his fork barely touching the gourmet meal Helena had prepared. "She was in an abusive marriage, but she hid it well. When she finally decided to leave, her husband killed her rather than let her go." Sophia set down her wine glass, understanding beginning to dawn. "You saw me as vulnerable?" "I saw you as someone who deserved better than public humiliation," James corrected. "Elizabeth never got her second chance, but you can." The weight of his words settled between them. This wasn't just charity or a momentary impulse. James Wellington, one of the most powerful men in the country, was offering her something unprecedented. A chance to rebuild her entire life from the ground up. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Sophia asked, though part of her already knew the answer would change everything. James leaned forward, his blue eyes intense with purpose. "Stay here. Let me help you discover who you really are when you're not trying to fit into someone else's expectations. I think you might be surprised by what you find." As thunder rumbled outside and rain began to fall against the tall windows, Sophia realized she was standing at a crossroads. Behind her lay the ruins of her old life, the humiliation and heartbreak that would define her if she let it. Ahead lay the unknown, presented by this mysterious billionaire who seemed to see something in her that she had never recognized in herself. The choice would determine not just her immediate future, but the kind of woman she would become. And as she looked across the candlelit table at James Wellington, Sophia Blake felt the first stirring of something she had never experienced before. The desire to be truly powerful in her own right. Sophia woke to sunlight streaming through silk curtains she didn't recognize. For a blissful moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories crashed back like a tidal wave. The altar, Trevor's confession, Rachel's tears, and James Wellington's unexpected rescue. She sat up in the luxurious bed, still wearing the slip she had put on under her wedding dress. The elaborate gown now hanging in the wardrobe like a ghost of broken dreams. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Helena entered, carrying a silver tray with coffee, fresh fruit, and pastries that smelled like heaven. "Good morning, dear," Helena said warmly, setting the tray on the bedside table. "Mr. Wellington thought you might prefer breakfast in your room today. The media has been quite persistent at the gates." Sophia's stomach dropped. How bad is it? Helena's expression grew sympathetic. The story's on every news channel and social media platform. But James has his legal team working to remove the worst of it. He's also arranged for security to handle any reporters who might try to approach you directly. The reality of her situation hit Sophia like a physical blow. She wasn't just dealing with personal heartbreak anymore. She had become a public spectacle. The jilted bride whose humiliation had been witnessed by hundreds and broadcast to millions. The billionaires. Proposal later that morning, James found Sophia in his private library, a room that rivaled any university collection. She sat curled in a leather armchair, having lost herself in a first edition of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. When he entered, she looked up with eyes still puffy from crying but showing the first spark of curiosity he had seen since rescuing. I see you've discovered my weakness," James said, gesturing to the thousands of books surrounding them. "Most people assume tech billionaires only read coding manuals and stock reports." "Literature has always been my escape," Sophia replied, closing the book carefully. "Even as a child, I preferred stories to real life, stories of happy endings." James sat in the chair across from her, studying her face with an intensity that made her self-conscious. "What if I told you that you could write your own happy ending? That yesterday doesn't have to define the rest of your life," Sophia said, the book aside, giving him her full attention. There was something in his voice that suggested this wasn't just motivational speaking. 3 months, James continued. "Give me 3 months to show you a world you never knew existed. Let me introduce you to people who will value your intelligence and creativity. Let me help you build a business empire of your own." "Why would you do that?" Sophia asked, though she suspected the answer involved his late sister. James was quiet. For a long moment, staring out the library's tall windows at his manicured gardens. Elizabeth was brilliant. She had a degree in fashion design from Parsons, ideas that could have revolutionized the industry. But she married young to a man who convinced her that her dreams were silly, that her place was supporting his ambitions instead of pursuing her own. He turned back to Sophia, and she saw pain flash across his features. By the time she realized what she had given up, she felt it was too late to start over. She died believing she was worthless, that her only value was as someone's wife. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm not her." "No, you're not," James agreed. "But you're at the same crossroads she faced. You can let yesterday's humiliation define you, or you can use it as fuel to become something extraordinary." The makeover begins. The transformation started subtly. Helena had filled Sophia's wardrobe with clothes that fit perfectly but were more sophisticated than anything she had ever owned, instead of the safe, conventional outfits she had always chosen. These pieces were bold and elegant, designed to command attention rather than blend into the background. Victoria Ashford arrived. On the third day, a renowned stylist whose clients included A-list celebrities and European royalty. She was a whirlwind of energy and opinions, circling Sophia like an artist studying a canvas. "Bone structure like a runway model," Victoria murmured, lifting Sophia's chin to catch the light. "But you've been hiding behind safe choices your whole life. We're going to fix that." The next few hours were a revelation. Victoria didn't just change Sophia's appearance. She taught her how to carry herself with confidence, how to enter a room like she belonged there, how to make eye contact that conveyed intelligence and strength rather than uncertainty. "Fashion isn't about clothes," Victoria explained as she worked. "It's about armor. The right outfit can make you feel invincible, and when you feel invincible, others see you that way too." When Sophia looked in the mirror after Victoria's work was complete, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back was polished, sophisticated, and powerful. Her hair had been cut into a sleek bob that framed her face perfectly. Her makeup was subtle but transformative, emphasizing her best features without hiding her natural beauty. But the real change was in her eyes. For the first time in her life, Sophia Blake looked like someone who belonged in a billionaire's world. The first test James had arranged for their first public appearance to be a charity gala supporting arts education held at the city's most prestigious hotel. As their car pulled up to the red carpet, Sophia felt her newfound confidence waver. "What if people recognize me?" she whispered, watching photographers position themselves for the best shots. "They will," James said calmly, adjusting his cufflinks. "And when they do, they'll see a woman who refuses to be defined by other people's choices. You're not the abandoned bride anymore, Sophia. You're my partner in rebuilding arts programs for underprivileged children." The word partner sent a thrill through her that she tried to ignore. Over the past week, she had found herself increasingly drawn to James's intelligence and quiet strength. He treated her as an equal, asking for her opinions on business matters, and genuinely listening to her responses. When they stepped onto the red carpet together, cameras flashed like lightning. James's hand on the small of her back was steady and reassuring as reporters shouted questions. "James, is this your new girlfriend? Sophia, how are you handling the breakup? Are you two planning to get married?" James ignored the questions entirely, guiding Sophia toward the hotel entrance with the confidence of someone who had never doubted his right to be anywhere. But he paused just long enough for the photographers to capture the perfect shot. Sophia looking radiant and self-assured. Every inch the billionaires equal. Discovering her power inside the gala, Sophia discovered something unexpected about herself. When introduced to influential people as James's partner in the Arts Foundation, she found she could hold her own in conversations about education, policy, creative funding, and social responsibility. Her years of reading had given her knowledge she hadn't realized she possessed, and her natural empathy made her genuinely passionate about the cause. "You're a natural," said Margaret Chen, the director of the city's largest children's hospital. After Sophia had delivered an impromptu speech about the importance of art therapy. "Have you considered a career in nonprofit leadership?" Suggestion planted a seed in Sophia's mind. Years she had defined herself through her relationship with Trevor, seeing her own dreams as secondary to his architectural ambitions. But here, surrounded by people who changed the world for a living, she began to envision a different kind of future. During the dancing portion of the evening, James led her onto the floor for a waltz. He moved with the same controlled grace he brought to everything else, and Sophia found herself following his lead without thinking. "You're different tonight," James observed as they swayed to the music, more confident. "I feel different," Sophia admitted, "like I'm becoming someone I was always supposed to be, but never had the chance." James spun her gracefully, pulling her back against his chest. For a moment they were closer than they had ever been, and Sophia could feel the warmth of his breath against her ear. "This is just the beginning," he murmured. "Wait until you see what you're truly capable of." The moment of truth later that night, back at the mansion, Sophia and James sat on the terrace overlooking his gardens. The success of the evening had left them both energized, and neither seemed ready to end the day. "I need to tell you something," James said, his usual composure showing cracks. "When I saw you at that altar, broken and alone, it wasn't just about Elizabeth. I had been following your work." Sophia turned to face him, surprised. "My work? Your wedding dress designs? They're extraordinary. I had my people research you after seeing your portfolio online. I was actually planning to approach you about designing for a luxury brand I was considering acquiring." The revelation hit Sophia like a physical blow. So this was all business? The rescue, the makeover, everything? "It started that way," James admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "But it stopped being business the moment I saw you collapse on those altar steps. Everything since then has been about helping you become who you're meant to be." He stood and walked to the terrace railing, his hands gripping the stone. "I'm falling in love with you, Sophia. That terrifies me because I don't know if what we're building is real, or if it's just gratitude mixed with proximity." Sophia joined him at the railing, her heart racing. The man who commanded boardrooms and bent entire industries to his will was vulnerable before her, and she realized that her transformation had given her a kind of power she had never imagined possessing. "Then let's find out," she said, reaching for his hand. "No more rescuing, no more projects. Just two people seeing if what they feel is real." As James turned to face her, Sophia saw her own desire reflected in his eyes. The kiss that followed was inevitable, passionate, and full of promise. Under the starlight, with the scent of jasmine in the air, Sophia Blake finally understood what it meant to be chosen rather than settled for. The girl who had been abandoned at the altar was gone, forever. In her place stood a woman ready to build an empire of her own, with or without a billionaire by her side. 3 weeks after the charity gala, Sophia woke to find her phone buzzing with notifications. Helena knocked urgently on her bedroom door. Holding a tablet with a grim expression, "The photos from last night's dinner have gone viral," Helena said softly. "Someone with a telephoto lens captured you and James on the private terrace at Romano's." Sophia looked at the screen and felt her stomach drop. The images showed her and James in an intimate embrace, their faces close together in what was clearly a romantic moment. The headlines were ruthless. "Billionaires rebound romance. From altar to penthouse in 30 days, and worst of all, love or calculated revenge." Within hours, every major news outlet was running the story. Social media exploded with opinions, memes, and cruel commentary about her rapid transformation from jilted bride to billionaire's girlfriend. Some praised her resilience, but many more questioned her motives and character. James found her in the library, staring blankly at a book she wasn't reading. His jaw was tight with controlled anger as he sat beside her. "My legal team is working to have the worst of it removed," he said quietly. "But Sophia, there's something else. Trevor has been giving interviews." Her blood ran cold. "What kind of interviews?" James pulled up a video on his phone. Trevor sat across from a sympathetic talk show host, looking appropriately remorseful. As he spoke about their relationship, his words cut like knives. "Sophia was always ambitious," Trevor was saying. "She talked constantly about wanting a different kind of life, more luxury, more status. I think she saw this breakup as an opportunity to upgrade to someone who could give her things I never could." Sophia felt physically sick. The man she had loved for 3 years was painting her as a gold digger on national television, rewriting their entire relationship to make himself look like the victim. The unexpected visitor that afternoon, as Sophia tried to lose herself in designing sketches for a new clothing line James had encouraged her to develop, Helena announced an unexpected visitor. "Diana Foster is here to see you," Helena said with raised eyebrows. "She insists it's urgent." Diana Foster was James's biggest business rival, a tech entrepreneur who had built her own empire from nothing. Sophia had seen her in financial magazines and knew she was considered one of the most formidable women in business. Diana entered the library like a force of nature. She was petite but commanded attention with her sharp suit and piercing green eyes. Without preamble, she sat across from Sophia and studied her with calculating interest. "You're causing quite a stir," Diana said directly. "Half the city thinks you're a fortune hunter. The other half thinks you're a genius for landing James Wellington. What do you think?" Sophia asked, surprised by her own boldness. Diana smiled for the first time since entering. "I think you're being underestimated by everyone, including yourself. I also think James is making the same mistake with you that most powerful men make with intelligent women, which is he's trying to protect you instead of unleashing you." Diana leaned forward. "I have a proposition. I need a creative director for my new luxury division. Someone with fresh vision who isn't afraid of taking risks. The salary is 7 figures, plus equity." Sophia felt the room tilt. "You're offering me a job? Don't even know my qualifications? I know you designed that dress you were almost married in. I know you've been quietly developing a fashion line that could revolutionize sustainable luxury. And I know you have something most people in my industry lack. Authenticity born from real adversity." The offer hung in the air like a lifeline. The first time since her humiliation, someone was valuing Sophia for her talents rather than her association with James. The confrontation when James returned that evening. Sophia was waiting for him. In his study, she had made her decision about Diana's offer. But first, she needed to understand exactly where she stood with James. "Diana Foster offered me a position," she said without preamble, "creative director of her luxury division." James's expression went carefully blank, the same look he wore in hostile business negotiations. And I'm considering it. But before I make any decisions, I need to know something. Am I your partner or your project?" The question clearly caught James off guard. He poured himself a scotch with hands that weren't quite steady, taking time to formulate his response. When this started, you were my project, he admitted. Someone I thought I could help, while working through my own guilt about Elizabeth. But somewhere along the way, you became something else entirely. What exactly? James set down his glass and moved closer to her. The woman I want to build a life with. The person who makes me want to be better than I am. Someone I respect as much as I love. His honesty was raw and vulnerable, but Sophia pressed on. Then why does it feel like you're still trying to manage my life? The security detail, the legal team handling my press, even this conversation about Diana's offer. You're controlling the narrative instead of trusting me to handle it myself. James was quiet for a long moment, and Sophia could see him wrestling with truths he didn't want to face. Because I'm terrified of losing you, he finally said. Elizabeth made one independent decision, and it got her killed. I can't handle the thought of something happening to you because I wasn't there to prevent it. But that's not living, James. That's existing in a beautiful cage. Sophia reached for his hands. I need to know that you believe I'm strong enough to face whatever comes, with or without your protection. The return of the past their conversation was interrupted by Helena's urgent knock. I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's someone here who insists on speaking with Sophia. He won't leave. Sophia's heart sank even before Helena said the name. Trevor stood in the mansion's foyer, looking haggard and desperate. His usual polished appearance was gone, replaced by rumpled clothes and bloodshot eyes. Oh, Sophia, please, he said when he saw her. I need 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to explain everything. Against James's visible objections, Sophia agreed to hear him out. They sat in the formal living room while James waited nearby, his presence both protective and intimidating. I made the biggest mistake of my life, Trevor began, his voice breaking. Rachel and I, it was never real. It was just excitement, the thrill of something forbidden. But what we had, Sophia, that was real love. Sophia studied the man she had almost married and felt only pity. You humiliated me in front of everyone we knew. You let me plan our entire future while you were having an affair with my best friend. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. We can start over anywhere you want. I'll be the man you deserved all along. The irony wasn't lost on Sophia. A month ago, hearing these words would have meant everything to her. They felt hollow and manipulative. Trevor, she said gently, I'm not the same person you left at that altar. I've discovered things about myself, about what I want from life that I never knew existed. Even if I could forgive you, I could never go back to being who I was. Trevor's face crumpled. It's him, isn't it? The billionaire? You think he loves you, but men like that don't marry women like us. Sophia, you're a novelty to him, a project. When he gets bored, he'll move on to someone from his own world. The words hit their target because they echoed Sophia's own deepest fears. But before she could respond, James appeared in the doorway. I think you've said enough, James said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. Sophia has made her position clear. I suggest you respect it. Trevor stood, his desperation turning to anger. This isn't over, Sophia. When he breaks your heart, don't expect me to be there to pick up the pieces again. It's a declaration after. Trevor left. Sophia and James stood in the aftermath of his visit, the weight of unspoken concerns hanging between them. He's not entirely wrong, Sophia said quietly. Come from different worlds. Your friends, your business associates, they all see me as the woman who wasn't good enough for an architect, but somehow landed a billionaire. James turned to face her fully, his expression more serious than she had ever seen it. Then let's prove them all wrong. Before Sophia could ask what he meant, James dropped to one knee and pulled out a ring box. But this wasn't the desperate proposal of a man afraid of losing someone. This was the calculated move of someone who had found exactly what he wanted. Sophia Blake, he said, his voice steady and sure, you are the strongest, most intelligent, most courageous woman I have ever known. You've transformed not just yourself, but me. You've shown me what it means to love someone as an equal, rather than trying to protect them from life. The ring was stunning, but not ostentatious, a perfect sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught. The light like captured stars. I'm not asking you to marry me because I rescued you, or because you need security, or because it would be convenient for either of us. I'm asking because I want to spend the rest of my life being amazed by what you'll accomplish next." Sophia felt tears streaming down her face as she looked at this man who had seen her potential when she couldn't see it herself. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course, yes." The new beginnings 6 months later, Sophia stood in the penthouse office of Foster Enterprises, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her first fashion collection had launched to critical acclaim and commercial success. The sustainable luxury line had been featured on magazine covers and worn by celebrities who genuinely believed in its message. James appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the smile he reserved just for her. "How does it feel to be the most sought-after designer in the city?" he asked, setting her coffee on the massive desk she had earned through her own talent and hard work. "It feels like the beginning," Sophia said, accepting his kiss and marveling at how perfectly their lives had aligned. "Internationally, we're talking about opening studios in Paris and Milan, and how do you feel about that?" Sophia grinned, the expression transforming her face with pure joy. Terrified and exhilarated and completely ready for whatever comes next. That evening, they attended their engagement party, hosted at the same hotel where they had made their first public appearance together. But this time, Sophia walked the red carpet not as James's rescued project, but as his equal and partner in every sense of the word. When reporters shouted questions about their whirlwind romance, Sophia answered, with the confidence of someone who had nothing to hide or prove, "Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing," she said, her engagement ring catching the camera flashes. "Getting left at the altar taught me that I deserve more than someone who settles for me. I deserve someone who chooses me every single day." As they entered the ballroom, where 300 guests waited to celebrate their love, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The girl who had designed her wedding dress in hope and heartbreak was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who had built her own empire, earned her own success, and found a love that enhanced rather than defined her. The fairy tale had turned out to be real after all, but the best part was that Sophia had written it herself.